All right, let's go to the budget. We talked a lot about this yesterday, of course. A lot of different groups weighing in. Kelly Higginson is president and CEO of Restaurants Canada because, as per the new budget, there's some news in here that, the people she represents, various restaurants across this country, are not all that thrilled with. So, first of all, thank you for being here this afternoon, and let's go through this. What is it that stands out to you as something that you hope might happen that didn't happen?
Having me and your interest in this for us. Really we feel the federal budget was a missed opportunity to provide some immediate relief to Canadians struggling with affordability, and it's on that day-to-day basis. Hardworking Canadians need to see something that they can feel at this point. We've been struggling with this chronic affordability issue for a number of years, which has a direct impact on their quality of day-to-day life, but also obviously on our operations. We've got 75% of Canadians saying they are cutting back further on their restaurant spending due to the lack of discretionary spending. So while we see grand, large-scale plans for the long term, which, of course, we will see some impact to maybe 5-10 years down the road, we need to see something that addresses that affordability today. That's really where we were focused on.
Can I ask, if we're talking about addressing that today, what would you have liked to have seen in this budget that would have done that?
So we have talked extensively with the government, and our recommendation had been to exempt all food from GST. And this addresses the affordability issue. It addresses inflationary pressures that we're seeing in food. It not only reduces the cost of food Canadians, but it also stimulates jobs, especially youth jobs, which, again, we have an issue with. And what we've modeled out, thanks to that experiment we had with the GST holiday, was that we would be looking at a potentially over 64,000 jobs created, 40% of which would go to youth. And so there's that stimulation within the economy, but also addresses affordability and food inflation.
So just go back to that. That's a pretty big number, that estimate anyway. The idea that we had a break in it and it paid off. You actually have numbers of how things improved by virtue of that GST holiday?
Absolutely. And we thought it was going to be good, but it was incredible, the impact. Let's remember it was a January and February, which it was the primary period that ran. During January and February, we generally shed jobs, shed hours, are really cutting back. We saw an increase in sales of almost 10%. We saw 24,000 jobs created in January and February in our sector nationally. And so we saw a real uptick in both traffic, so foot traffic, and then the average check, so what people were enjoying while they were out. And again, this is something that we've seen. Canadians are not just pulling back on the amount of visits to restaurants, but they're really pulling back on what they're buying when they're in the restaurant, cutting down to just snacking, sharing entrees, cutting out certain things, whether that's the appetizer or the dessert, again, impacts their experience and dramatically impacts our operators from being able to run a viable business.
So I'm assuming there have been discussions with the government right before the budget was released. Did you have the impression that there would be this change incorporated, or what was reaction from the government when this came up?
We had a number of meetings with MPs and their ridings over the summer, and there was definitely a lot of support for it. There was a lot of interest as we head into the fall and had some initial conversations. But we knew that there was going to be some sacrifices and some challenges with this budget. But what we were hoping to see is that this government was finally going to see the opportunity to address affordability, to stimulate jobs, and to really support the communities that we serve across the country.
I would also, I'm guessing, but I'm beyond guessing. I know this is a concern because I know it's come up before. The idea of the number of temporary foreign workers, the government slashing those numbers as well. What about your position on that?
Yeah, so, we were pleased to see the government recognizes the unique needs of rural and remote and tourism communities in some of the language they were using in its new immigration plan. But food service and hospitality needs to have access to those labor pools. That is critical for us to be able to continue to operate and serve the communities in rural areas of the country. And we are alarmed by the drastic cuts to immigration in the budget. And these have been introduced with no path to replace these workers and to fill existing jobs and future job vacancies, which I have to highlight leads to simply a decrease in services, decrease in shifts, decrease in positions to the locals, and an inability to operate a viable business. So, and it also will lead to increased prices for Canadians as we try and stretch that out. So it will have a dramatic increase. So we need to see the government recognize the unique needs of rural Canada, which they have, but also of the food service and hospitality sector.
You know, I don't think people, and it's funny, we talk about this happening in our own city. I'm in Montreal, and we've had restaurants that have been forced for whatever reasons to shut down. I wonder, what's it like? You know, you're representing a national organization here. Have you heard these types of stories from other people in the business?
Absolutely. I mean, we've seen a regular increase in bankruptcies within the sector over the last 4 years. 2 years ago, we had our worst year ever in bankruptcies. And this is, again, because we're getting hit from both sides. The input costs continue to go up with inflationary pressures, trade issues. I mean, it's a long list of reasons as to why our input costs continually go up. But then we've got Canadians pulling back on their spending.
Right.
And then we've also got, dramatic increases, and this obviously falls as an input, but commercial real estate costs. I mean, it's just insurance. It's an endless long list of things that our operators are grappling with. And when it just doesn't make sense anymore to operate these businesses, that's when they have to shut the door.
Yeah. Just as a final question, maybe it's unfair to ask. I mean, what's next? I mean, the government has presented this budget. You're going to continue discussing, negotiating with the government. What do you expect to happen next?
Well, it's going to be, we're going to hit the ground again. We have to have conversations around immigration and how they plan to address that and make sure that there is some really a strategic approach geographically to how they roll out their plan. Continued conversations on costs. I mean, we've got a long list of things that they can do to both stimulate jobs and cut down on costs for our operators. Cuts to EI premiums. This would benefit both employers and employees who both pay into EI premiums. Yeah. We've got cutting the alcohol excise tax. There's a lot of areas that we could see some trimming, and that's where we feel that for something that was going to be listed as transformational and stimulating the economy, while we may have seen a long-term plan, we did not see a short and medium-term plan.
We will leave it at that. Kelly Higginson from Restaurants Canada, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Unmistakably Canadian.
It's the music that raised you.
The artists raising the bar.
Hi, this is Brian Adams.
Hey, my name's Brett Emmons. I'm from the Glorious Sons.
Hi, I'm Nelly Furtado.
Made in Canada. The station that champions Canadian music.
Loud, proud, and all yours.
No passports required. Just press play.
Tap into Made in Canada now on iHeartRadio.ca
or the free iHeartRadio app.